addition to their standoff. The person who's in the crosshairs, the Wrestling Federation President Brijbhushan Singh, is also doubling down. He says there is no question of resigning. He says he's an elected president of the WFI. He's not there because of anybody's charity. So, the big question then, what will give, how and when?
खिलाड़ियों को मारने तक की धमकी दे रहे हैं, तो इससे बुरा समय और क्या होगा। तो दबाव में तो आदमी कुछ भी कर सकता है।
जो इस तरह लड़कियां आवाज उठाएंगी तो मैं मानता हूं भविष्य में खतरा टल जाएगा।
जल्द से जल्द कार्रवाई हो और दूध का दूध पानी का पानी हो, सीबीआई जांच हो, तो प्रधानमंत्री जी बताएंगे उनका कि उसमें क्या बोलना है और क्या कार्रवाई करेंगे।
इस्तीफा कोई सवाल नहीं। मैं जो है किसी की दया पर नहीं यहाँ पर बैठा हूँ। मैं चुना हुआ अध्यक्ष हूँ जनता के द्वारा।
All right, and breaking news coming right at the top of brass tacks. The Indian Olympic Association has now formed a 7-member committee to probe the allegations of sexual harassment against WFI chief Brijbhushan Sharan Singh. The members include Mary Kom, Yogeshwar Dutt, and eminent Olympians who have represented India. Let me go across to Arun Dhanta, who is joining us live from outside Anurag Thakur's residence, where the meeting is going on for the last couple of hours between the protesting wrestlers and the sports minister. But more importantly, the Indian Olympic Association, headed by a woman, one of India's most famous women athletes, now getting down to brass tacks and saying that we're going to have an investigation committee. It has 7 members, which include some of the finest Indian Olympians, who will get to the bottom of these allegations raised by India's wrestlers. The point is, how soon can we expect some kind of a movement on that story? And more importantly, what's going on inside in Anurag Thakur's residence? What's the chance that the second meeting in 2 days will actually lead to a resolution of this conflict?
Well, Zaka, as we speak, the meeting is still underway here at Anurag Thakur's residence. We have delegation of wrestlers inside. We have the officials of Sports Ministry, Sports Authority of India, and of course the Union Minister inside. And it's been 2 hours since the meeting is underway. And meanwhile, also, as you rightly break down this, that the Indian Olympic Association meeting got over, which was called by the chief of the IOA, PT Usha, at around 5:45. It was an online meeting where all the members of Indian Olympic Association participated, and this meeting came after the letter written by the wrestler to the IOA, and now they have decided that a 7-member panel will look into the complaints of the wrestlers, and it has the likes of Yogeshwar Dutt, Mary Kom, Dola Banerjee, along with the 2 lawyers. So these 7 people will be part of this IOA's formed new committee. However, the timeline has not been fixed that how much time this committee has to actually give.
All right, Arun, give me a moment. I'm sorry I'm interrupting, but Yogeshwar Dutt is one of the 7 members of this IOA committee. He's now joining us on the phone line. Yogeshwar ji, बहुत-बहुत धन्यवाद हमारे साथ जुड़ने के लिए. क्या आपको कोई ऑफिशियल कम्युनिकेशन आया है IOA की तरफ से कि एक इन्वेस्टिगेशन होगा और इन्वेस्टिगेशन कमेटी जो 7 मेंबर का कमेटी है उसके एक अंग आप भी होंगे? कोई कम्युनिकेशन आया अभी तक?
देखिए, आज हमारी मीटिंग थी IOA की जी, और लगभग 2 घंटा वो मीटिंग चली है। वो इसी विषय पे थी जी, वो इसी विषय पे थी कि भाई खिलाड़ियों के साथ ये जो भी चीजें हुई हैं ये बड़ी गलत है। ये जो खिलाड़ियों ने अभी ये लगाए हैं, एलिगेशन लगाए हैं, तो ये बड़े गंभीर आरोप है। तो इनकी एक जांच कमेटी बनाई गई है, और किस तरीके से खेलों में पारदर्शिता है, खिलाड़ी परेशान ना हो, उसी को देखते हुए ये चीजें हुई है। और मेरा मानना है कि इनका अभी जो कमेटी जो काम करेगी बिल्कुल निष्पक्ष तरीके से करेगी
जी। आपकी जो कार्रवाई है ये कब तक शुरू होगी? कल से शुरू होगी?
हाँ, बिल्कुल। अभी हमारी मीटिंग लगभग 2 घंटे मीटिंग, बड़ी लंबी मीटिंग हो चली है। इसमें ये है कि भाई जो भी चीजें हैं उसमें फिर उसमें जांच हो और सबको मतलब एक लोग न्याय मिलना चाहिए खिलाड़ियों को।
तो आप खिलाड़ियों को बुलाएंगे, उनके साथ बात करेंगे, उनका स्टेटमेंट रिकॉर्ड करेंगे, ये जो WFI प्रेसिडेंट है, अध्यक्ष जो हैं, उनको भी बुलाएंगे पूछताछ के लिए?
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल बिल्कुल, सारी चीजें होंगी इसमें
जी। और ये IOA के पास क्या पावर है, इस कमेटी के पास क्या पावर है? अगर आपका
क्या तो डिस्कस हो जाए कि भाई कहाँ आरोप होते हैं, क्या होते हैं, एक बार मिल के बात करेंगे, क्योंकि आज ऑनलाइन जूम मीटिंग थी, उसमें अभिनव बिंद्रा जी भी थे,
जी
हमारी अध्यक्ष तो थी, उसमें एक बार मिल के बैठ के लगभग जल्दी वो बात करके ये कमेटी गठित की है, ये आयोग के पास क्या पावर, क्या यूज कर सकते हैं, क्योंकि इस्तीफे की बात भी हो सकती है, उसमें अलग अलग चीजें हैं कि भाई हमें
तो आपके पास कितना टाइम है इस जांच को करने के लिए? कितना टाइम है आपके पास?
इसमें अभी तो यही बोला कि जितनी जल्दी से जल्दी हो सके, क्योंकि ये बड़ा गंभीर मसला है, इसमें लंबा टाइम नहीं खींचना।
क्या आप IOA के पास इतना पावर है कि वो WFI के अध्यक्ष को सस्पेंड कर दे?
देखिए, इस्तीफा मांगने की हक तो आयोग के पास है, क्योंकि आयोग सभी संघों से ऊपर है, इसके अंदर में इनके चुनाव होते हैं
जी।
वो आगे की बात है कि क्या होती है, एक बार अभी स्टार्टिंग वो चीजें हैं।
और अगर वो इस्तीफा नहीं देते तो आपके पास है पावर उनको सस्पेंड करने के लिए?
कुछ चीजें, जो भी चीजें हैं उनको यूज करेंगे, आयोग का जो पावर है वो यूज करेगा।
जी, ओके। योगेश्वर दत्त, thank you very much. He's part of course, he's an Olympian bronze medalist. He's of course part of that IOA panel that will now look into these allegations, specifically the sexual harassment allegations. Sunita Godara is an ex-Asian marathon champion. Harpal Singh Bedi, senior sports journalist. Alka Tomar, wrestler. Norris Preetham, sports journalist, also joining us. Sunita Godara, let me start with you first. So the IOA stepping in. Clearly, the IOA has some kind of overseeing power over these other federations. But in terms of provisions that can make a material difference, can the IOA, if Brijbhushan Singh is not forthcoming with his resignation, do they have the powers to suspend him, to overrule him?
Yes, because all these federations come under IOA, and IOA is under Olympic Charter, and then they have to abide by the rules and regulations of Olympic Charter, where if any federation not abiding by the rules and regulations of Olympic Charter, then they can debar the federation, or they can ask for suspension, or they have superpower for this. And in this case, if you go to WFI website, they have made a very illegal committee. They call it ethics committee, but on top they write sexual harassment committee. And in that committee, they put 4 men and Sakshi Malik, 1 lady. Whereas in the sexual harassment committee, the chairman should be a female,
correct,
of top class, and then there should be another lady from the NGO head, and then there should be 1 male, knowing about the rules and regulations and legal knowledge. This is how 4 people. This is how the sexual harassment committee is made. I'm already in the board of 2 sexual harassment committee of police department, CSF and NCB, Narcotics Control Bureau. And this is the pattern of sexual harassment committee, whereas this WFI has not made any sexual harassment committee.
Okay. So let me ask Harpal Singh Bedi, what happens next? Because clearly the sportspersons have had their second meeting with the sports minister in 2 days. Brijbhushan Singh seems to be doubling down. Where is he getting the power and the authority to say that I'm not going to quit? Clearly, if government also wants him to quit, why are they not able to enforce it?
Now, how you are sure the government wants him to quit? Remember one thing, all these so-called Bahubalis, or any Bahubali, for any matter, it cannot be Bahubali without the government or the system. Remember this thing, 1 second. IO has all the powers. They can disband. IOA dismissed KPS Gill under Suresh Karmadi and even disbanded Indian Hockey Federation. So IOA has all the powers. And the question here is not of IOA can do or not. The question is about sexual harassment.
Yes.
And these girls they have a case before that. I think this case will go to IOA. They will see. Forget about what WFI has said. That committee has no meaning. So it is IOA which will decide whether to take action or not. And I think the players are there. to their players of integrity. They are there. But one thing is that they should have taken this issue to IOA in the beginning all the way. And surprisingly, Sakshi Malik, who is here, is a head of the sexual harassment committee in the Wrestling Federation of India. And why they did not go to Sakshi Malik? Sakshi Malik is protesting at the Jantar Mantar. But
no. So I think the answer to that question came from Sunita Godara, who said that that sexual harassment committee of the WFI is against the sports code because it has to be headed by a woman. Sakshi Malik is a member. She doesn't head it. And there are, I think, 4 men and 1 woman there. Anyway, be that as it may, what I want to know, and yeah, let me ask Norris Preetham also. I can't believe for the life of me that whoever this man Bahubali is, he's clearly not more powerful than the government of India. And if the sports minister is having multiple meetings with the protesting wrestlers, Olympians are sitting on the street, then where is this man deriving his power to continue on his kursi, as it were?
Raka, I think your question has an answer to it. You very rightly said that the sports minister has been meeting and the Olympians are sitting. So the question instead of asking what Bahubali has or what Mr. Brij Bhushan has power, what stops the government to take action? I think that's the most question. And another thing is, I think so far we have been debating these things when there is absolutely no official complaint by the victims. I think it has a legal angle to it, which is very important. And I'm 100% sure if the wrestlers had filed a complaint, at least a police complaint, maybe the action would have been taken. And,
no, but Norris Preetham, clear this for our viewers. Does the government, the sports ministry have the powers to not just, remove this gentleman as the president of the WFI, but what the players are asking for is a complete suspension of the apex body of the WFI. Does the government and the sports ministry have those powers?
Well, the straight answer is very difficult to give because there have to be a serious allegations. I mean, you cannot do it because after all, he is also, by virtue of being the president of a national federation, he is also under the World Wrestling Federation.
Yes.
Okay, this is a very tricky issue. So, therefore, the sexual harassment case is 100% in which the government can take action. And that is why the government is not doing anything so far. They are just depending on this committee, that committee, somehow asking the wrestlers, and ultimately what will happen, the wrestlers will get tired and they will get up and everything will go waste. So this is what my hunch feeling is.
So let me ask Alka Tomar. Alka ji, आपके जो साथी हैं वो सड़क पे बैठे हैं, अभी 3 दिन हो गए हैं, 2 मीटिंग्स हो गए उनके खेल मंत्री के साथ, अभी तक कोई मामला सुलझा नहीं है। आपको लगता है कि बिना अध्यक्ष WFI जो बृजभूषण सिंह हैं, बिना उनके स्टेप डाउन करने से ये समस्या का हल हो सकता है? बिकॉज वो कह रहे हैं कि मैं किसी के दया से यहाँ बैठा नहीं हूं, मैं चुनकर आया हूं, तो मैं क्यों जाऊं, ये उनका मानना है।
ये बात तो उन्होंने सही कही है, क्योंकि हर बार कमेटी के जो इलेक्शन वगैरह जो भी होते हैं उसमें अध्यक्ष पद के लिए चुनाव होते हैं हर साल, 4 साल में या जितने बार भी होता है, तो उसमें जिसकी ज्यादा वोट वगैरह होती हैं तब ही ये पद उसको ही मिलता है। तो ये बात उन्होंने कही थी। और रही हमारे खिलाड़ी साथियों की बात, मैं भी एक खिलाड़ी हूँ, तो मुझे भी जब पता लगा एकदम से इन्होंने ये धरना प्रदर्शन किया, मेरे पास भी फोन आए या मैंने इनकी वीडियो वगैरह देखी, तो एकदम चौंका देने वाली ये बात थी हमारे लिए भी कि एकदम से ये क्या हुआ।
तो क्या आपको लगता है, आपने भी कुश्ती खेली है, क्या आपके करियर में उसके बाद कुछ ऐसे घटनाएं घटी हैं जहां लड़की कुश्ती करने वाले आकर आपके पास बोले हैं कि ऐसे ऐसे कोच हो या WFI अध्यक्ष हो या कोई और पदाधिकारी हो, उन लोगों ने उनके साथ बदतमीजी की, ऐसे यौन शोषण की, ऐसे
नहीं? देखिए, मैंने 2011 में रेसलिंग छोड़ दी थी, तब माननीय अध्यक्ष जी प्रेसिडेंट बने थे रेसलिंग फेडरेशन के, तो उस टाइम पे मैंने रेसलिंग छोड़ दी थी 2011 में। लेकिन मैं एज ए कोच इंडियन टीम के साथ रही हूँ। मैं 2018 में कोच के तौर पर ऑस्ट्रेलिया में गई हूँ और अध्यक्ष साहब भी वहां पर गए थे। और इन लड़कियों के जो फाइटें होती थी, सभी फाइटों पे उनको बैकअप करने आते थे, मोटिवेट उनको करते थे, प्रैक्टिस टाइम में भी आते थे। तो कभी भी ऐसा नहीं लगा मुझे, तो मैं सच्चाई आपको बताऊं, मुझे कभी नहीं लगा। मैंने शायद 3 साल में कैंप में रही हूँ, इंडिया कैंप में, तो मुझे कभी ऐसा नहीं लगा, ना मुझसे किसी ने कहा, एक भी लड़की ने अभी तक।
We've had a couple of wrestlers yesterday and today, and I want to ask Harpal Singh Bedi this. A lot of wrestlers have also come out and countered this, saying that, well, Brijbhushan Singh Sharan may be a lot of things. He may be a gunda, he may be a Bahubali, so on and so forth. But we don't think he's a molester. In your experience of covering this sport, Harpal Singh Bedi, does that become irrelevant because an allegation is there and that allegation needs to be probed? Or what has been this gentleman's record so far?
Zaka, let me tell you one thing. The dirt is in both the camps. It's not that when Brijbhushan said, if I say something, tsunami will turn, he's not wrong. This Wrestling Federation has a very checkered, not so glorious past. V.C. Shukla, you must have heard his name. He was all-powerful minister during Mrs. Gandhi's time. He was the president of Wrestling Federation of India. उसके कपड़े उतार दिए थे स्टेडियम में. They just tore his wrestlers. So no president of Wrestling Federation has come with a grace or has gone with a grace. This is a very tipsy-turvy organization. It is very difficult to explain what is happening. So when this Brijbhushan saying if I am saying something, because 80% of the wrestlers there, or wrestlers or officials, everybody, either they forged their age group, or they did they changed the date of birth to get the awards, the Padma Award or Arjuna Award. So there is too much of dirt with both sides. Don't blame one body. So whether Brijbhushan Singh is molested or not, I cannot say. I am nobody to judge about it.
Fair
but
enough,
the time has come to come clean. This you must see the federation history. It is not the first time this is happening. This is but because the TV channels are there, so we have come to know everything. Otherwise, these wrestlers used to beat the officials in the stadium. Now, because they have come out, simple as that.
Look, let's be very, very clear. Of course, the TV channels magnify and amplify what is happening, but on the ground, the fact that Olympians are coming and sitting on the streets, I don't think that's happened ever before. That's why.
The Olympians, my dear sir, but listen to me. These were the Olympians who beat up V.C. Shukla. These were the Olympians or the Asian Games champions who threatened so many other presidents.
Of course.
And Norris will tell you further.
No, of course. There is an Olympic silver medalist who's in jail for murder. So yeah, look, I'm not here, trying to give a character certificate or otherwise to anyone. Yeah. My point to know, Norris Preetham, is Brijbhushan Singh is completely doubling down. He says, I don't have a care in the world. No one can remove me. He's waiting for the AGM that's going to happen on Sunday. What may possibly give? Because I still can't wrap my head around the fact that this is a major embarrassment for the government. You have wrestlers, Olympians sitting on the street. They've had multiple rounds of meetings with the sports minister, and yet they don't seem to be able to get this man to quit. And I frankly don't think that unless he quits, there is going to be a resolution to this problem, at least not in the immediate term. The first step has to be that he steps down.
Yeah, I mean, again and again we are going back to the same thing. Why is he not resigning? Why is he not stepping down? The fact is he knows that nothing can be done. I mean, if the government, there has to be a political will. And you know, and I also know that he is a politician, he is a member of parliament and a very strong member of parliament. He has got a good hold in UP, and no government will touch him, because the coming elections are also there, that thing in mind. So I don't think government will take, government may have been wanting to get rid of him as WFI president, but they also need a scapegoat, they also need a way out. That is why again and again I'm saying, if the wrestlers go to police and then becomes a tool for the government to take action. Government will not say, Brijbhushan Singh, please you step down. I mean, if government had that will, he openly on camera, he says, I have shot a man, and then he said he slapped a man, which is already on cam. He slapped a wrestler.
Yeah.
What did government do? I mean, these two are reasons good enough to sack him.
No, I think the most grave charge that has been brought forth, and I want Sunita Godara to respond to this, the gravest charge that's been brought forth is that of sexual harassment. Maladministration, corruption, all of those things you can deal with. But sexual harassment is a criminal offense. And it's been 3 days And I can't understand why the wrestlers have not filed a police complaint. Vinesh Fogart says initially it was just 2 or 3 girls, but now there are at least 5 or 6 of them. Today she said there was a 30-minute audio clip of this gentleman speaking to a wrestler from one of the states. And from that clip, you can evidently see how he's harassing her. Why not put this out into the public domain? The point is that it's been 3 days and the only thing that seemingly can give in the story is the sexual harassment allegation. If there was no sexual harassment allegation, I don't think Brijbhushan Singh's continuance would have been that difficult. But with the sexual harassment allegation, his continuance at the head of the WFI has become untenable, according to me.
That's true. You know, ministry has full power to ask him to get out of the federation, means just suspend him from the federation, ask him to resign. That power they have, because as per POCSO rules, sexual harassment allegations, when anybody putting that, they don't have to come out with the names and all, you know, and going to the police, they have done the better thing coming to the media, because as per Olympic Charter, if any athlete in any distress come out and give video recording, audio recording, or to the press, that is a pakka, final evidence.
Okay.
So ministry has that, because all the channels are covering and it is all recorded. It can be seen again and again and again. And you know, why they are delaying 4 days? The whole world is watching this ugly face of the sports politics, or whatever it is. You know, the
Alka Tomar, let me ask Alka Tomar जी, आपको लगता है कि ये जो आरोप इन्होंने लगाए हैं, पिछले 3 दिन से सड़क पे बैठे हैं, इनको आगे आके पुलिस कंप्लेन दर्ज करनी चाहिए? आज भी विनेश फोगाट ने बोला है कि उनके पास एक 30 मिनट का ऑडियो क्लिप है, एक रेसलर और अध्यक्ष बृजभूषण सिंह के बीच में जो वार्तालाप चल रही है, उसका एक ऑडियो क्लिप है. अगर वो ऑडियो क्लिप रिलीज कर देगी तो पूरा सच सामने आ जाएगा. तो मैं आपसे ये पूछना चाह रहा हूं कि अभी तक क्यों हुआ नहीं है ये? अभी तो 72 घंटे हो गए हैं जब से वो सड़क पे बैठे हैं, लेकिन अभी तक भी ये पुलिस कंप्लेंट, कोई कंप्लेंट दर्ज नहीं हुआ है.
बिल्कुल, मैं तो दूसरे चैनलों पे भी यही बोल रही थी कि जो भी किसी के पास प्रूफ है, वो प्रूफ आप दिखाइए, और जो भी आपने इल्जाम लगाए हैं वो साबित हो जाएंगे, और जो भी सजा इन्हें मिलेगी वो मिलनी चाहिए. अगर जो भी गलत है यहाँ पर, चाहे वो प्लेयर हैं, चाहे अध्यक्ष हैं कुश्ती फेडरेशन के, तो आपके पास सबूत हैं, आप पुलिस के पास जाइए, कंप्लेंट दर्ज कीजिए, ना कि सभी के नाम बताकर. अगर भाई हम एक लड़की हैं, हमको अभी भी लगता है कि हमें नाम छुपाने हैं, या इस तरह से बातें आ जाती हैं लड़कियों के उस पर, तो आप कंप्लेंट तो इनकी दर्ज कर सकते हैं, आप एविडेंस दिखा सकते हैं, आप प्रूफ दिखा सकते हैं कि
जी, हमारे पास ये प्रूफ है. मैं हमारे दर्शकों को ये भी बता दूं कि सेक्सुअल हैरेसमेंट केसेस में और विमेन हैरेसमेंट केसेस में, डोमेस्टिक वायलेंस केसेस में, जो विमेन के खिलाफ जो क्राइम्स होते हैं, क्राइम्स अगेंस्ट विमेन, वहां पे अगर विक्टिम जो है अपना नाम पता वगैरह नहीं देना चाहती है, तब उनका आइडेंटिटी पूरा एनोनिमस भी रख के वो पुलिस कंप्लेन दर्जा कर सकते हैं. लेकिन अभी तक वो हुआ नहीं है, और मैं जानना चाहता हूं कि क्यों हुआ नहीं है.
यही किसी को भी समझ में नहीं आ रहा है कि आप इतना बड़ा धरना प्रदर्शन आपने किया, इतने बड़े आपने इल्जाम यहाँ पर लगाए हैं, तो आप पहले पुलिस कंप्लेंट करते, आप एविडेंस आप दिखाते. हाँ, नाम जैसे आपने कहा कि नहीं दिखा सकते, छुपा सकते हैं हम, तो ठीक है, छुपा के आप कर सकते थे ये चीजें.
Okay, Harpal Singh Dedi, what is likely to happen between now and Sunday when there is this emergency meeting of the WFI? As I understand, a majority of the members of the executive body of the WFI will have to ask for this gentleman's resignation. That may or may not happen. What is most likely to happen? Will he step down before that meeting or during that meeting? Or is he still going to brazen it out?
Best thing, he cannot brazen out. He may be a greatest Bahubali, but he cannot fight the government. But the best thing will be all these girls give the proof to Amit Shah straight away that we do not trust the police. We have some respect for ourselves. We do not trust anybody. These are the proof, and this is the clear sign. And why you are having them, this MP in your party? Simple. They are very powerful women now. Media with them. Let them go to Home Minister. Say that we don't trust police because we have some respect, and also says secrecy should be maintained. Here in the seal envelope, we are giving you all the proofs. Please look into it and then they decide. I think this is the easiest thing to happen. They are not doing it. On 31st day, Vinay said, I will name the people. And this man retorted. He said, you say something. If I open my mouth, tsunami will come. I said, there is a dirt both sides. But the girl should take courage and go to Amit Shah, Home Minister, straight away. Don't
No,
go
no,
to
there
police
may
if you
be
do not
dirt
believe
on
in
both
police,
sides,
or you
which
do not want to go
is
to law.
fine, which
And
is kosher.
submit
But
the
I
envelope,
think,
give
like
the
I said,
proof, and finish it.
the sexual harassment allegations are the most grave. That is the one that is completely changing the nature of the allegations against this gentleman Brijbhushan Singh. Because if it was just corruption, maladministration, badly organizing camps and so on, that would have been responded to in a very different way, in a very different nature. But the moment it became sexual harassment, that's where I think clearly everyone's sort of ears perked up. The attention of the nation was on these wrestlers because there is zero tolerance for this. There is absolutely zero tolerance for sexual harassment in any workplace, in any federation. So let's see how that story plays out. Norris Preetham, I'll sort of start getting closing comments from you and then Sunita Godara. What could possibly give? I believe that you cannot have a solution until this gentleman steps down. He seems to be digging his heels in. Something's got to give.
Raka's police complaint is, as I started saying that, this is one thing, but I'm surprised that so far the government or somebody or some activist or somebody has not filed an PIL, or government can take a suo motu action also. I mean, if you go in the streets of Delhi, we see a boy watches a girl and the girl says he was staring at me, and the police immediately catches him. And because, as you said, there is no hearing in sexual harassment case, that comes later. First he is caught. Now here is a man who claims that he has shot a man, who slaps people, and yet nothing, because he is a powerful man. So there has to be a will for the government to do something. If you keep that because he is an election year aane wala hai and BJP member hai and is a parliamentarian, then nothing will happen. I am sorry to say that unless there is a concrete action by the government, nothing will happen.
Sunita Godara, do you see the possibility of Brijbhushan Singh stepping down? And like I said, the other complication is the government of the Sports Ministry does not have the authority or the power to ask him to step down or to forcibly sack him. If they have to do it, they have to suspend the entire federation, and that could of course have further ramifications. The World Wrestling Federation could come in to their rescue, so on and so forth. So really, they are caught between a rock and a hard place. But what do you expect could likely happen in the next couple of days?
The World Wrestling Federation will follow the Olympic Charter. So they know there is a sexual harassment allegation. Now the ministry has to come out very strong. IOA has to come out in a strong manner, because they can also do everything. Because police may, I fully agree with Mr. Bedi, when they will go to police, evidence वगैरह पता नहीं कहाँ चले जाएंगे. So it is better to go to Amit Shah. They are, from the very first day, they are saying they want to meet PM and HM. And now Sports Ministry should take strong action. What is their, it's their jurisdiction. It's not that they don't have power, they don't have authority. The Sports Ministry can ask him to, just leave the federation, or they can debar the federation, make another committee for time being, and probe this case.
अलका तोमर, आपको मैं लास्ट वर्ड देता हूँ. ये बताइए कि आपको लगता है कि ये जो आईओए का कमेटी है, उनके पास पावर्स हैं, उनके पास ये जांच करने की अधिकार है कि क्या हुआ इन रेसलर्स के साथ, इसका निष्पक्ष जांच होने का उनके पास अधिकार है? क्या आपको लगता है कि आईओए की जांच कमेटी से ही जो सच है, जो दूध का दूध और पानी का पानी हो सकता है?
देखिए, उम्मीद तो है पूरी की सोच समझ के ही ये कमेटी बनाई गई होगी खेल मंत्री जी द्वारा. तो लगता है कि दूध का दूध और पानी का पानी हो जाएगा, और पूरे देश को इंतजार है, हम सबको भी इंतजार है कि जो सही है वो ही हमारे सबके सामने आ जाए, और सब सच्चाई सबके सामने आए. बस.
Okay, we leave it at that. Thank you very much, Sunita Godara, Alka Tomar, Harpal Singh Bedi, and of course Norris Preetham for joining us. I'm going to take a quick break here on the program. When we come back, as the standoff, it's been going on for the last many months now between the judiciary and the government. This is over the appointment of judges, both at the High Courts and at the Supreme Court, and that has taken a rather public and a rather ugly turn. We'll tell you more about that right on the other side of this quick break. बोला कि कल तक तो दो तीन लड़कियां थी जो उन्होंने जो आरोप लगाए हैं। आज 5 से 6 महाराष्ट्र से, उत्तर प्रदेश से, हरियाणा से, बाकी जगहों से 5 से 6 लड़कियां ऐसे हैं जो उनके संपर्क में हैं जिन्होंने ये आरोप लगाया है। तो आपको लगता है कि तुरंत इस पे एफआईआर होनी चाहिए और पुलिस की कार्रवाई होनी चाहिए?
इसके कानून के सभी कानून का एक कानून बना हुआ है, एक लॉ बना हुआ है हमारी, कि उसके दायरे में रह के हम क्या काम कर सकते हैं, कानून से बाहर रह के हम क्या काम कर सकते हैं। सरकार भी बस एक यही कर सकती है इसमें कि इसकी निष्पक्ष जांच हो, चाहे वो जांच किसी से हो, चाहे सीबीआई से जांच हो। पर जो हम आरोप लगाए हैं, जो अगर जब तक कुछ एफआईआर दर्ज नहीं होगी तब तक मेरे को लगता नहीं ये चीजें होंगी। जब तक कोई सामने आके ये चीजें नहीं बोलेगा, कोई विक्टिम तो इस चीज में होना बड़ा जरूरी है, क्योंकि उसके अलग तो ऐसे तो बीच में कोई ऐसी बात आती है तो लोग जब तक सामने नहीं देखते, प्रत्यक्ष को नहीं देखते कि भाई ये चीजें हैं, तब तक उसमें बड़ी दिक्कतें होती हैं।
बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद योगेश्वर, हमारे साथ जुड़ने के लिए बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। Let me now go across to our guest. We'll be joined in a moment by Rahul Mehra. He's the Delhi Government Counsel. He's the man who took the BCCI to court. V. Krishnaswamy is sports journalist. Jayaprakash is Joint Secretary of the WFI and wrestler. Here in our studios, G. Rajaraman, sports commentator. Varsha Chaudhary is a wrestler as well. Let me start with Jayaprakash. आप Joint Secretary हो WFI का. I think it's got to a situation where ब्रिजभूषण सिंह जो है वो WFI के अध्यक्ष के रूप में अभी काम नहीं कर पाएंगे, बिकॉज रेसलर्स ने बोला है मिनिमम स्टेप, बेसिक मिनिमम स्टेप जो है, दिस हैज टू बी टेकन, ही हैज टू गो। आपका क्या कहना है? क्या ब्रिजभूषण सिंह अभी भी कंटिन्यू कर सकते हैं?
देखिए, अभी कोई जो आप बता रहे हैं कि भाई चार्ज लगा रहे हैं या ये कह रहे हैं कि भाई इन्होंने ऐसा किया है सोशल, तो अभी तो कोई किसी ने बोला ही नहीं है कि भाई आप, दूसरे ही लोग तो बता रहे हैं कि भाई इन्होंने इस तरह से यौन शोषण किया है। आप कोई ऐसा तो सामने नहीं आया उठ के कि भाई हाँ मेरे साथ ये हुआ है।
नहीं, विनेश फोगाट ने जो आज बोला है, आपने सुना भी है, विनेश फोगाट ने जो बोला कि कल तक 2-3 लड़कियां ही थी, आज 5-6 लड़कियां उनके संपर्क में हैं और उनको ये मजबूरी ना की जाए कि वो पुलिस कंप्लेंट किया जाए। आपने सुना ना?
देखिए, नहीं, मैंने सुना है, आपने सुना है, अच्छे से सुना है, पर ये बताइए कि मैं भी ओलंपियन हूं, मैं भी कोई अगर इस तरह की बात बोलूंगा कि विश्वास किया जाएगा कि एक ही दम मैं बोल दूंगा कि भाई ये हो रहा है, तो क्या आप विश्वास करेंगे मेरा?
नहीं सर, क्या बात कर रहे हैं? 3-3, 4-4 ओलंपियन रेसलर्स जो हैं, जो महिलाएं हैं, वो सड़क पे बैठे हैं और आरोप लगा रहे हैं पूरे मीडिया के सामने, पूरे देश के सामने। क्या आप कह रहे हैं कि वो झूठ बोल रहे हैं?
ठीक है, नहीं, ठीक है, आप वो आरोप लगा रहे हैं तो मैं क्या सच मान लेंगे? क्या आप लोग सच मान रहे हो क्या इस बात को?
सर जी, उसमें तो कार्रवाई होगी, पुलिस कंप्लेंट होगी, एफआईआर होगी, वो मैं मान सकता हूं, वो गलत नहीं है, लेकिन कम से कम वो इस्तीफा तो दे दें, कम से कम वो ये कह दे कि मैं पेंडिंग इंक्वायरी स्टेप डाउन कर रहा हूं, इतना तो बनता है।
नहीं, वो क्यों बोल दे, ये कह दें कि भाई हाँ ये गलत, ये मैंने किया है,
क्योंकि आरोप तो उनके खिलाफ है, इसलिए तो उनको स्टेप डाउन करना पड़ेगा। आरोप तो आपके खिलाफ नहीं है, मेरे खिलाफ नहीं है, आरोप तो उनके खिलाफ है, तो नैतिक तौर पे तो जिम्मेदारी बनती है ना उनकी।
क्या आरोप है?
यौन शोषण की आरोप है।
कौन आरोप कौन बता रहा है?
करप्शन की आरोप है, भ्रष्टाचार की आरोप है।
3-4 ओलंपियन मैं भी लेके बैठ जाऊं, मैं भी आरोप लगाने लगूं, मानेगा?
क्या बात कर रहे हैं जयप्रकाश जी? मतलब देश देख रहा है, सुन रहा है, आप क्या बोल रहे हैं?
बताइए मुझे एक ही बात।
नहीं, आप थोड़ा मतलब ध्यान से बोलिए, क्या बोलना चाह रहे हैं। ठीक है, आप ये कह सकते हैं कि ये आरोप तो नहीं, एफआईआर होनी चाहिए, कोर्ट में जानी चाहिए, ये सब ठीक है, मैं मान सकता हूं, लेकिन ये तो मत कहिए कि 3-4 आदमी के साथ बैठ जाओ और मैं भी बोल दूं कि क्या सच हो जाएगा। क्या विनेश फोगाट, बजरंग पूनिया और साक्षी मलिक 3-4 आदमी हैं? आपके नजरिए में वो जरा सा आदमी है, साधारण आदमी है? क्या कह रहे हैं?
स्पोर्ट्समैन है, आज अच्छे नहीं सुनिए, आज अच्छे स्पोर्ट्समैन है, मैं भी बोलता हूँ, लेकिन ये थोड़ी है कि आप भाई जब तक इंक्वायरी ना हो, जब तक कोई जांच ना हो, जब तक जांच करानी पड़ेगी।
यही कह रहे हैं कि जांच होना चाहिए, लेकिन जांच तभी हो पाएगी जब ब्रिजभूषण सिंह, and I want G. Radharaman, V. Krishnaswamy also to weigh in on this. There is no way you can have an independent, unbiased investigation against Brijbhushan Singh and the coaches as long as the people who are accused of that are still sitting in positions of power. It's as simple as that. You have to step down pending inquiry. Of course, nobody is prejudging the outcome. Let the police go into the heart of the matter and come to a conclusion one way or the other. But I'm convinced that you can't have that person sitting in a position of authority and have an independent inquiry. It can't be possible.
Zaka, what you're saying is right. If the Wrestling Federation of India is conducting an inquiry, then the Wrestling Federation of India president perhaps need to step aside. But if the inquiry is being done by the sports ministry or even by
the police,
for example, or the National Commission of Women, then maybe he can continue where he is and he's not going to influence the witnesses. I think it's important for us to understand that who is going to conduct the inquiry. The sports ministry has asked for a response from the Wrestling Federation of India.
Yeah.
And I really believe that the wrestlers must move courts of law, they must move the police, they must move the National Commission of Women, and then perhaps we can talk about how the president needs to step aside so that there is a sense of fair play and justice that comes in when a hearing happens.
I want to ask V. Krishnaswamy. So, one of the things that Bajrang Punia today said in his press conference is, just by this gentleman Brijbhushan Singh stepping down, you are not going to rid his power or, his influence on the federation. He's just... The standoff between the judiciary and the government over the appointment of judges to high courts and Supreme Court has taken an ugly turn. The Supreme Court Collegium has released publicly the intelligence reports on at least 5 judges who were to be appointed, or at least who were recommended by the Collegium to be appointed to various high courts. And the Collegium has made public their rejection of these intel reports. Now, they vary from being openly gay to having a foreign partner to even expressing one's opinion on social media. Now, this, the government says, will be a matter of discussion between the Collegium as well as the government. But at the same time, the government also insists that the Collegium system itself is opaque. It needs reform, and only judges appointing judges cannot be kosher anymore. At this stage, what's going to give and how? All right, it's now a case of who will blink first. Let's go across to an eminent panel of lawyers who are joining us on this debate tonight. Arima Sundaram is Senior Advocate at the Supreme Court. Aman Lekhi, former Additional Solicitor General. Bishwajit Bhattacharya is also former ASG. And Karun Anandi, Senior Advocate, also joining us. Let me start with you, Arima Sundaram. For the first time, you have the Collegium put on record in public their comments, their rejection of these intel reports. I don't think these intel reports have ever been made public about recommendations of names by the Collegium of lawyers who can be promoted to become High Court judges or judges who can be promoted into the Supreme Court. By making it public, has it got to a stage where the differences between the government and the judiciary on some of these names have become unbridgeable?
Well, I wouldn't say that, because the differences have been there for a period of time, over many years. The Supreme Court has a strong collegium, a collegium which believes in the real doctrine of the separation of powers, that believes that the judgment already laid down by the Supreme Court as to the appointment of judges has to be followed, and the collegium is sticking to the law as has been declared and as prevails today. As to the issue of making it public, I think this goes with the overall increased demand for transparency which had taken place, which resulted in transparency, not now, but over a period of time on various issues which affected the public and various issues, whereas earlier the judiciary was considered to be in an ivory tower. It's whatever happened there was meant to be completely opaque. Over a period of time, on demand of the public and, I must say, the media and the working of the media, the transparency has increased. So much so that today, when this is being commented on left, right and center by the media anyway and by everybody else, and on the government side it is very clear that it has been stated why they are saying no, for the Collegium to reiterate and make very correct and bold statements with regard to what was said about both Saurabh Kirpal and Mr. Somashekar. I think the Collegium is just is applying the law as stands in India, as has been declared in India.
So let's look at these cases individually, and I want to ask Aman Lekhi this. In the case, I think the most dramatic is that of Advocate Saurabh Kirpal. This was the Intel report's objection to him being elevated as Delhi High Court judge. He is gay. He could be biased because of his open support for gay rights. His partner is a Swiss national, to which the Collegium has responded by saying it's unconstitutional to reject the candidature on grounds of sexual orientation. There is no reason to presuppose that the partner of the candidate, who is a foreign national from a friendly country, would be inimical to our country. Many persons holding high offices have foreign partners. Inclusion of Kirpal in the judiciary will add to the diversity of the bench. It does seem rather odd and strange in this 21st century, where even the Supreme Court had struck down on Section 377 to say that you can't have an openly gay advocate appointed as a judge in a high court.
Absolutely. I mean, the stand the Collegium has taken is unexceptional. I'm surprised at the comment the government gave because what I recollect the letter was that passionate pursuit of gay rights. Now, a lot of energy, enthusiasm, fire is something which is expected of Indians, and we want passionate people on the bench too. Now, pursuit will not necessarily mean bias unless there's predisposition. And in any case, as long as the discipline to keep one's perspective out of an assessment for which there's a legal procedure, merely because you have a view, will not in any way disqualify you as a judge.
Yeah.
Unless, of course, you sanitize minds altogether and scrub them of all content. Each one of us has a view, and the views collectively constitute an ideology. Now, merely because some of us have an ideology doesn't necessarily mean that holding of the ideology disqualifies the person from elevation.
Yeah.
Because an objection to the ideology is equally an ideology. Now, with the objection to the ideology is equally an ideology, the question is, what the Supreme Court says, multifariousness, a multi-dimensional approach and plurality becomes important because we want all voices on the bench. As long as the legal acumen and capacity is there, insofar as the entitlement to be on the bench is concerned, there can be no objection. And more so, because the memorandum procedure and the Supreme Court itself has ruled, which is binding on the government, as the recommendation has been reiterated, the discretion of the government to in any way avoid, notwithstanding some unhealthy precedents of the past where the Supreme Court itself conceded to the government's demand, it is obligatory that the government does in fact appoint. There have been some chatter about his being the judge of son of an earlier judge and some correlation with the current Chief Justice. What is missed is that the recommendation did not come from this Collegium. The recommendation is 2017 to 2018. It's a different scenario altogether. Yeah. And it's a reiteration of the recommendation and not initial recommendation.
Okay.
So the entry of politics into it and the guise of ideology, both are unsavory. And insofar as the entitlement is concerned, it is unobjectionable.
Okay, let me ask Karunanandi, the larger question that the government has been asking, and we've seen this public sparring between the law minister, some judges who have opined on this matter, is that the Collegium system is opaque, it needs reform, whether it's the NGAC or any other form of appointment of judges. The larger question they're asking is if in the US, the president appoints judges and has to be confirmed by the Senate. In the UK, the king appoints judges upon advice by the Prime Minister. India is perhaps the only system where judges appoint judges. That's a larger question that the government is asking. Karunanandi.
we don't have kings in this country. We do have basic rights. And those basic rights have been adjudicated through our constitution, by our Supreme Court and our parliament and our governments. And the law has evolved in a variety of ways. The law as it stands now, as both Mr. Sundaram and Mr. Lekhi have placed, and I agree with them, is that the second judge's case in particular, and now we have, effectively 4 judges' cases along with the NGAC judgment, says that the ultimate decision maker here is the Chief Justice. Has the government upheld the Constitution in this regard? No. Because just in the case of, let us first take the case of Mr. Kirpal. The name of Mr. Kirpal has, the Chief Justice has, and not just this Chief Justice, as Mr. Lekhi pointed out, even prior Chief Justices, have reiterated his name. And now this is the second reiteration. This goes against constitutional norms. Secondly, the law currently under the Nalsa judgment is that, as Justice Radhakrishnan says, is that gender identity is one of the most fundamental aspects of life. And this includes sexual orientation. It refers to each person's deeply felt internal and individual experience of gender. And this includes the protection, expressions of gender, including dress, speech, or mannerisms, right? Mm-hmm. Now, Mr. Kirpal, having, he's not someone who, he's I think, quite private about his life. But the fact that he has not hidden his sexuality, it's a travesty for the Intelligence Bureau to say this. And indeed, it exposes the fact that the Intelligence Bureau cannot speak for the government, and the government must independently apply its mind through the Attorney General. The reason being that the Intelligence Bureau is not rooted either in any statute or indeed in proper norms, because there's a story that's told actually about an Intelligence Bureau report about a nominee who was referred to as boozy in his boarding school. And they said that he's referred to as boozy and he's an alcoholic, and the man was a teetotaler. He'd never touched a drop in his life. So by making these reports public and by making their opinion public, I think the Collegium has taken a step in the right direction. Because what is happening now is a greater level of transparency. It is the fact that the Collegium is standing up to a long-cherished value of diversity on the bench. And it is the fact that, frankly, the IB objections in many, almost all of the cases that, I've seen, in fact, I've not seen one objection that seems to be robust.
But here's the thing. We've had these public sort of sparring, if you will, Bishwajit Bhattacharya, the law minister questioning, Collegium, the fact that there is no system called the Collegium as per the Constitution. It was upheld, of course, in a couple of judgments. But as the government says, this is a convenient way. You have every other high appointment in this country, which is vetted by the people in some form, either through parliament or through the elected government. Nonetheless, I'm not getting into that aspect. The larger question, you also had the vice president recently even go to the extent of questioning the basic structure. He says there is no such thing as a basic structure up until a judgment that happened in the 1970s. But nonetheless, the larger question that's being asked is it time for reform of this system? Is it possible that the Supreme Court and the higher judges of the Supreme Court will agree to a system where it's not just 3 judges who decide who gets appointed to high courts and who gets appointed to the Supreme Court, that there will be greater representation in that system? Bishwajit Bhattacharya?
Zaka, the rule of law reigns supreme in India, and the law as on date, as it is, that the Collegium decision after the second reiteration is binding on the government. And unfortunately, government is not complying with the recommendation of the Collegium. Government has been sitting over it. And you talked about, sort of reform. The biggest reform has started yesterday or the day before, when the Supreme Court Collegium, the top 3 judges of the country, emphatically reiterated with the reasonings with the Intelligence Bureau and RAW gave to the government. This shows what kind of total frivolous, insinuations can be made, which has got nothing to do with ability, integrity, and competence of the person concerned. So I personally feel Collegium system is basically evolved from 13-judge bench, Keshavananda Bharati. Then we had S.P. Gupta of 1992. Then we have the 3rd judge's case of 1993 and 1998. And finally, the NJAC. In NJAC, Zaka, the world must not forget that the government faced defeat. And the defeat was faced in 2015, 16th of October. So that is the law. The law as it stands today, the government is bound by the law declared by the Supreme Court. Article 141. Article 144 says all authorities, civil and judicial, shall act in aid of Supreme Court. So therefore, I think government has been ab initio wrong. I'm not saying this government or that government. It is basically 2 wings of the state. And you say that the Collegium system is not as per the Constitution. There is a total, if I may say with the greatest of respect, misconception widespread, because the Chief Justice of India has always been consulted in the appointment process. Collegium only impels the Chief Justice of India to consult his colleagues. That is called Collegium. So Collegium does not mean another institution. Collegium means the same Chief Justice of India now is obliged to consult and take the opinion of 2 senior most colleagues for appointment of High Court judges.
All right.
And for the Supreme Court judges and transfer of High Court judges.
Okay.
So
let me go back to Arima Sundaram on that point. Again, in the cases of Advocate Somashekar Sundaresan and in the case of, Advocate John Satyan, both of it pertain to, quote-unquote, their views as expressed on social media. Now, again, Arima Sundaram, in this day and age, to say that a free citizen of this country cannot express his or her views on social media, that is tone deaf.
I think, if you pardon my saying it, that particular excuse trotted out seems very, very hollow. Every judge, every citizen has his own views on various issues. That does not mean that if you're a person who has views and who can have independent thoughts, a thought which maybe does not run with the mainstream, you're not fit to be a judge. I mean, we always know, I've been in the bar for so many years, more than 40 years. Let me tell you that we used to know that there were benches which were very pro-labor. There were other benches which were pro-management. There were some benches which were pro-tenants and tenancy rights. Some which felt landlords should get their lands back. Now, they all had their views. There is nothing wrong. They had their views. But once they sit on the bench, they may have views. And because of those views, they may have certain disposition to a case. But that will not be their decision making. Their decision making will be on the law. And to think that such people are going to be guided by their own views and ignore the law is, I think, pardon my saying it, absurd. Because in other words, what if I take this to its ultimate, I lead to an absurdity that anyone who has independent views should not be made a judge.
Yeah.
Anyone who has, who can speak his mind should never be a judge.
Yeah.
Anyone who just does nothing except follow the mainstream should never be a judge. Is that what we are saying? On the contrary, what makes the Supreme Court the great institution it is in India is this divergence of views, this ability to look at a problem from different angles. It's only when you look at something from different angles and not from your own view and your microscopic look, when you look at it in a macro way, that you can really lay down law, which is what the Supreme Court does, the law which applies to the whole of India.
Okay.
And in diversity lies the great union of India.
Sure. So
and if you take away that diversity in thought,
let me go back
I'm
to
sorry,
Aman
but
Lekhi
it's
on the
leading to an
question
absurdity.
of what will give now, because I think it's got to a point where it's public. There is bad blood between representatives of the government and our higher judges. It's like I said, the sparring has been happening not in the back channels, not behind the glare of the media. It's been happening on the front pages of the newspapers. It's been happening on primetime debates. We're all talking about it. Has it got to a stage where somebody needs to step in and pull back and say, let's take this behind the scenes. Let's sort this out behind the scenes, because it doesn't seem like at this rate, it's become almost like an ego battle. It's become like who's going to blink first, who's going to give.
No, nothing should be sorted behind the scenes. Now that it's out in the open, we have the issues and the counter issues, the controversies in the public eye. The question here is that whatever steps we take hereafter, whatever decision is taken, appointment or otherwise, the reason for the acceptance or rejection is known, which is a very good thing. In fact, the whole objection was opacity, and as far as opacity is concerned, that is out the window, and now you've got transparency.
By saying that views expressed on social media are a bar for someone being promoted, then you're basically saying that his or her qualifications as a legal person, as a legal expert, mean nothing.
What you're saying is a very good point, Zaka Jacob. There's a Harvard study that looks at the orientation of judges after they are appointed to the Supreme Court, and whether they are liberal or conservative, they tend to the middle after they are appointed, which is quite interesting. The experience of being on the bench and of adhering as they must to the doctrine of precedent is something that causes them to move towards the center. Now, in our own legal system, and I think that having looked at Bush versus Gore and other judgments of the United States Supreme Court, that our appointment of judges system is imperfect but better. And Indore Development Authority, which is a Supreme Court judgment of 3 judges, speaks of when a judge must recuse themselves. And I think this applies in equal strength to views expressed prior to appointment to the bench. And what it says is that opinions may abound when you are looking at a particular issue. Mm-hmm. But the point is that do you do your job when you are on that bench and you are hearing a particular case? Do you adhere to the requirement of precedent? Mm-hmm. Do you adhere to the lack of bias? Do you listen as a judge? And these qualities, I think, when you look at some of these candidates, when you see people like Saurabh Kirpal and Somashekar Sundaram and Mr. Satyan, the Collegium has chosen well. And it is now really, I think, up to the government to set this battle of perception at rest, because the legality and the constitutionality is clear.
Okay, we've got to wrap up at that. Thank you very much to all our panelists. We'll see how this plays out in the next chapter. Will the government now put an end to this? Because the ball is clearly in their court. Thank you very much for joining us. सर जी, उसमें तो कार्रवाई होगी, पुलिस कंप्लेंट होगी, एफआईआर होगी, वो मैं मान सकता
और क्या होगा, तो दबाव में तो आदमी कुछ भी कर सकता है।
जो इस तरह लड़कियां आवाज उठाएंगी तो मैं मानता हूं भविष्य में खतरा टल जाएगा।
जल्द से जल्द कार्रवाई हो और दूध का दूध पानी का पानी हो, सीबीआई जांच हो।
इस दीपक कोई सवाल नहीं। मैं जो है किसी की दया पर नहीं यहाँ पर बैठा हूँ। मैं चुना हुआ अध्यक्ष हूँ जनता के द्वारा।
Hello everyone, you're watching News Epicenter with me, Maria Shakil. Dangal between India's champion wrestlers and Wrestling Federation President Brij Bhushan Singh continues. Both sides refused to budge after the protesters dropped a bomb earlier this week, accusing the WFI president of corruption, sexual harassment, torture, exploitation, and even death threats. As the protests continue, the wrestlers say more and more women are contacting them to level charges against the WFI president. After a late